couldn't help but think about the young people growing up in this. How do we hold them as they face what's coming? How do we even start to have a real conversation with them about this? Dar was telling me about his way and about a conversation he had had with his 16-year-old nephew.
He already essentially knew the punchline, that we are in it deep and that his future will look nothing like mine when I was that age. And he completely understands that. And so my job then is, how can I support you? And not like I'm going to support you and then you're going to do your thing, but like, okay, I'm here and you come back whenever you want. And when you need a break, I'm at your service. I'm at your service. And, you know, I'm a tool, I'm a resource. Use me, call me anytime you want. Because how much energy are we going to spend talking to younger generations or each other, pretending like things aren't what they are? Let's just admit the truth and then behave accordingly, because we're still here and there's still immense amounts of work that need to be done. And we are absolutely morally obliged to try to save as much as we can and mitigate and buy ourselves time. And, you know, and boiling it all the way down, I got to a point when I was actually in a 3-month writer's residency when I was working on kind of my book outline and I was writing my introduction to the book and I was trying to find the voice of the book. And I had all this data together, which was a culmination of years and years of reporting and research. And I was completely overwhelmed. I mean, I looked at it in total and it was like, it's over. Why even write the book? We're off the cliff. It's like, why do anything? And a good friend of mine, Nick Terry, out in this small town where I was at the time, is a Zen meditation practitioner and teacher. And he had a class every Tuesday that I would go to and sit. And he'd come over sometimes for coffee. And he came over when I was in that kind of despair. And I said, Nick, why even write the book? And he says, you know, Dar, if there's one tiny organism in the Amazon that gets to live one more week because you write your book, then it's worth it.
We've got to be okay in the uncertainty and the emotional difficulty. We've got to be okay ourselves and with each other. That's okay. That's normal to be confused and to feel pain in this context, and learn how to hold each other in that. And in that calmer way, then start to explore, so what do we do? Or what do we stop doing? Because I realized a lot of people would just want quick solutions, like, oh no, okay, what do we do? Where do we run? Who do we blame? Who do we fight? Is that kind of reaction. And so I wanted to help create something that invites a different way of being. And one Outback pilot, she told me, yeah, you're talking about extending the glide. You know. I
love this analogy.
And
go on, yeah.
And she said, well, yeah, like if your engine cuts out, you've got problems. Your first thing to do is extend the glide, because you're two things. You know, you might suddenly gives you time to maybe kickstart the engines or solve whatever technical problem you've got, or you're also trying to look for a safer place to land. And then maybe the third thing is to give yourself time to, if you can't call home and say goodbye, just process your life and say thank you, have some gratitude for the experience of your life.
I could definitely feel in Jem someone who is choosing to live in these times in a much more awake and open-hearted way. On one hand, I felt this rising reverence and appreciation for life. Yet on the other, a painful, deep ache of facing up to a lot of death and loss.
But what comes for me is just mountains of sadness.
Yes.
And, you know, that's something personally that I've been wading through and continue to wade through. Very difficult to relate to the world in the same way.
Yes.
I know in my own journey across the life, I've done a lot of work not giving in to that sadness, working with it in some ways where I wasn't going to be a depressing person, in inverted commas. But this feels like another level again.
That's exactly right. I think anyone who
understands the circumstances that we're in has to feel sadness. If you're a human and you're not a sociopath, you're going to have to feel sadness. And I feel that the time that we're in the great dying, right? It comes with sadness. Now, does that mean that we can't feel joy? No. Or that we can't feel love? I mean, I love the Jonathan Franzen quote, even in a world of dying, there are new loves being born, that you keep finding in your day, tiny little things that are beautiful. And even if you may have a sense that they will not last, I mean, nothing does last, you know. It's often been described, this understanding, as similar to being in hospice, but still with relatively healthy bodies. If one happens to still have a healthy body, in a way you can have the benefits of hospice, which is often people report intense feelings of love, priorities get more straight, you don't sweat the small stuff, you're not obsessed about legacy and your name continuing and all those kinds of things that are often ego-based. There are, and I know we've spoken about it before, there are ways in which you feel more awake and alive and even free, certainly psychologically free in a lot of ways. And it comes with sadness. You pay a price for it. It comes with sadness for sure. And I don't see any way around it. I, as someone who shares Dharma sessions with people, I've looked also for those kinds of perspectives, and I cannot honestly offer any that alleviate the sadness. I can't bear any kind of transcendent talk that is rife in the spiritual scenes. It's just another form of denial and some sort of crazy bargaining that doesn't work. It's rough. It's like Van Morrison said, rough God goes riding. This is a rough ride, and we're watching a lot of very sad things, you know, very sad circumstances, and yet I feel so tender for everyone.
Five days ago today, I lost my best friend to cancer. And I got to sit with him, you know, and he did everything he could to fight, and had a big surgery. And then, you know, things started to go south shortly thereafter, and they had him on a breathing mask. And we knew we had extremely limited amount of time with him, you know, like days, if not hours. And, you know, we knew he was going to die. He knew he was going to die. And me and his partner and he's quadriplegic, so he had a personal assistant. And we were all there, and we just loved him and talked to him and were with him all the way through it, you know. And it was one of the most amazing, magical times and powerful experiences I've ever had in my life. And, you know, what I just, you know, once I knew, okay, my best friend Dwayne's on the way out, like, do I stop loving him? Do I stop caring for him? Do I stop showing up and doing what I can? No, I mean, the opposite. I'm going to show up and be as absolutely present as I can. And that's what I did. And I feel like that's where we are on the planet right now. Like, is it a given that the human species goes extinct? No. Does it look like that's what's going to happen? Very, very, very likely. It's really hard to see that this does not end that way, but we don't know for sure. And so I don't add the "but we don't know for sure" part to give false hope. I add it just because I think we have to have enough humility to say we're this tiny little speck of life on Earth, and we've never been here before. We don't know what's going to happen. We know things are going to get extremely hard and bad. And I think it's a given that billions and billions of people are going to die. Does that mean all the species goes? Who knows? But it means here we are in this moment where we can still love the Earth, we can still love each other, and we can still take care of each other. And the Earth as best we can. And I think it just brings all of that into focus right now.
You know, we have to come back into a deeper allowance and belief in the human spirit. And we have to, you know, this prayer that I gave when you guys came, means we are your children, and speaking to the great wonder, and which is inclusive of the mother earth, and we are her children, you know. So to pretend that we're not her children is to be really messed up in a certain way in our thinking, right? So people say, oh, well, the earth would be better off without us humans, we're defiled, so on and so forth. That's like saying that the mother will be better off without her child. That's just completely insane. You know, the mother loves her child. You know, no matter how messed up she might be because of whatever trauma, she loves her child still. And that's the relationship that we need to imbibe, really.
I got the message to do this book by being out in the mountains, you know, and this is why when I've given talks on my book and book readings, I try to leave people with the importance of listening, because dominant Western culture is doing anything but listening. And indigenous wisdom tells us it's all about listening. And so for me, when I was on Denali and got that message to go to Iraq, that wasn't from here. That came up into me while I was up on the mountain because I was listening. And then later, when I was in the mountains, I had this really deep, strong pull to do this book, The End of Ice. I had plans to do another book. I already had a contract to do another book about Iraq. And I literally had to completely change directions and say, no, that's not what's in me to do now. I need to do this book. And so that was from listening. And now I'm at a point now where the book came out in January, and I'm still giving some talks on the book, but I need to do some different writing now. And it's in conjunction, or it's along the lines of, we need to be really listening to the earth, and we need to be really listening to people who that is their culture and that's what they've always done. And so my writing's now taking me more in a direction of indigenous thinking and indigenous perspectives on what's happening. And I can say cursorily up front, the single most important thing is to listen. And I think, again, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but right now at this time, each one of us, if we go out and really listen as closely as we can, then I do believe that if we do that the right way, each one of us will get what's ours to do. And in that way, the earth is the organizer. You know, we're not going to have a political organizer. We're not going to have a famous journalist. We're not going to have some leader. No one's going to tell us what to do. All of the systems that brought us to this place are abject failures. Capitalism with a green leaf, which would be the Green New Deal, abject failures.
Even the green movement itself.
Right.
Yes.
It's failed. Let's admit it. And we're on our own. I mean, what government on the planet right now, even in the best case scenario, is coming anywhere close to reacting to this the way that it should be? No one's even starting to come close. So we're on our own. It's up to us, but we're still here. And so are we going to listen and behave appropriately now? Because if not now, when? Because we have a chance right now to go out and listen. And then I truly believe each one of us then get our marching orders, if you will, from the earth. And then the question is, are we going to do what we're told?
My first ceremony, as I perceive it now, with my grandfather was him taking me down to a pond in a ditch bank and sitting me down at probably age 6 and just telling me with his eyes to sit. And he sat next to me, and we sat for a long time until all this life came around us, this just incredibly beautiful life. And I was sitting there in my mind going, okay, what are we going to do? What's he going to teach me? Where are we going to go and stuff? And he's looking at me and he's going with his eyes, just sit. And so pretty soon the frogs come up and birds are all around us and everything. And then there's all these incredible dragonflies, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dragonflies that are flying all around us with this different colors, the brilliant turquoise and really bright chance crimson. And these are, some of them are really small damselflies and others are like 5 inches long. And pretty soon, and they're right in front of me. And pretty soon I'm realizing that a whole ton of them are copulating. And they're flying right up to me, with the male or the female looking into my eyes right here, and the other one attached facing the other direction. And I'm 6, and all this life around me is having sex. They're procreating, and the energy was just over the top beautiful. And I couldn't think anymore. I could only be there, And I could only realize that I was completely immersed in, swallowed up, and part of this incredible thing that people call nature. And I was just like this. And then I got calm with it, and I looked at my grandfather, and he nodded, And I realized later, much later in my life, that was my first ceremony. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's what the Sweat Lodge does. That's what a lot of our ceremonies do. They bring you into the world in a way that teaches you how to be there in a humble way and in a way of recognizing the beauty. And that's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. That's why so many people say, this is the garden. This is heaven.
It was good to be home and to feel my feet back in the earth after so much travel, and to land again with Michelle, my love. I'm really not a gardener, not yet anyway, but I felt I needed to start to learn. There was something about Stan's ceremony that had left me thinking, and I carried that story with me for a long time. Yes, it was his first ceremony as a boy, but it was speaking to me in my life now. There was no medicine, no drums, no sacred words. It was simply him slowing down enough and stopping to open his eyes to the vast beauty. Couldn't I do that too? How can I stay open to this beauty even as the changes arrive?
Well, we thought we had a slice of heaven, but it's not how it's worked out. Mainly due to coronavirus, and the people that we were renting from have had to come back from overseas. So in very short time, we have to leave the garden that we were just settling into.
Yeah.
We feel pretty disappointed.
Yeah, it's pretty devastating, not just for us, but for them also. Their whole travel plans have been, have ended, and there's a sick mum over there, and it's really hitting home. Hitting home that things aren't going to be the same anymore, and to find security in this time is very challenging.
There's just no happy way to end a documentary like this. Since I started making it, I've been caught up in the fires in California and Australia. I've seen the outbreak of coronavirus, and I've watched the race protests in the States erupt. We can only expect more of this to come, as these are the days we're in. So the sudden loss of our rental seemed fitting for the times. Now it was time for us to find a new home, a place to drop deeper into ourselves, the land, and each other. I live in an extremely beautiful part of the world, and I'm grateful for that almost every day. But in the coming times, I can see little going as planned, from the basics of the way we live down to the age we expect to live to. It's so easy to collapse or lash out when we're threatened, and I'm no stranger to those reactions. But as Stan had said, we have a sacred obligation of how to be in these times. Learning how to do this in our communities and support systems will only be more and more important. It's also true that being in the unknown that all of this throws me into has given me the freedom to live more fully and focus more on the things that really matter. Time may, after all, be short. Learning how to be in these times is the only thing I can think of to focus on now. To quote Stan again, this is heaven, this is the garden, and I want to appreciate and love it all while it's still here and while I still can.
So what we now need is courage and acceptance. Courage because this is hard. It's hard for a tender heart to take this in, to live with this amount of sorrow. And acceptance, because the struggle against the truth of this is just another form of weariness. And in that acceptance, you find love. You find love for your own life. You find an incredible tenderness for the beings of time, the impermanent creatures that we are. You find a lightness, right? It's like Leonard Cohen said in one of his songs. So come, my friends, be not afraid. We are so lightly here. It is in love that we are made. In love we disappear.